In today's video we examine the unsolved case of Elaine Wakefield from Buxton, Derbyshire, England. On the 25th of February 1982 she left the house that she shared with her policeman boyfriend and set out on a 6 to 7 mile walk from which she would never return. 2 days later, on February the 27th, her partially clothed body was found by race organisers close to High End Raceway near Axe Moor in Derbyshire. She was only 20 years old. 40 years on, her death still remains a mystery and no one has been found accountable. In this video, we will drive out to Derbyshire, visit locations connected with this case, sift through the information that we have, and speculate on what may have happened to end the life of this young girl 4 decades ago. We know that Elaine originally came from Tunstead Milton, a tiny hamlet about 6 miles from Buxton. We parked here for a few moments and surveyed the small rows of houses that made up this hamlet in the high peaks of Derbyshire. The houses look quaint and old, and there's hardly any activity as we film. We know that Elaine continued to work as a petrol pump attendant in Tunstead Milton right up until the time of her death. We checked and the petrol station is no longer there. We knew nothing of Elaine's earlier life, where she went to school, what her hopes and dreams were for the life she would never get to live. We do know that she was an avid CB enthusiast and that this may have played a part in her death. We also know that at the time of her death she was living with a man 13 years her senior in Buxton. We're driving through the streets of Buxton, looking for the last place we know Elaine lived. Buxton is a town famous for its spring water. The high street has many old historical looking buildings. I can't help but think about how it may have looked back in 1982. It's a Sunday today and the streets are as busy as any other day. Sunday closing would have been the norm in the 80s, but times have changed. In 1982, 20-year-old Elaine Wakefield didn't have a mobile phone or internet, but she had the 80s equivalent, her CB radio. By all accounts, she was very keen on this, as were many others like her at the time. We know that on the day of her death, which is believed to be the 25th of February 1982, she set off on a long walk that would lead her to the remote hills of Axe Moor, just next to High End Raceway. She was spotted walking on 9 separate occasions that day by 9 different people. It allowed police to form a picture of the route that she'd taken. She wasn't seen walking with anyone else or talking to anyone else. It isn't clear if she walked the entire way, which would be 6 to 7 miles. She could have hitchhiked part of it. It apparently wasn't unusual for her to walk such distances, so either scenario could have happened. We want to visit the place that she shared with her boyfriend and retrace as much as we can the route that she would have walked that day. So this is Elaine's last address, the home she shared with her boyfriend. It's a large house and I would imagine it was probably split into flats or bedsits at the time. I'm not certain of this, I'm only speculating. From here, using the separate sightings provided by witnesses, we'll drive the route to the place where Elaine lost her life. As we drive, I can't help being struck by just how far this walk was for Elaine. Just getting out of Buxton town and onto the quieter roads is a trek in itself. February the 21st, 1982 was a Thursday. Elaine's walk began about 2:30 in the afternoon. At that time of year there would probably only have been around 2 hours of daylight left. Reports have it that it was particularly cold, and as the day wore to a close, the weather worsened. There was patchy snow. What is so difficult about this case is that it isn't clear what happened to Elaine. A post-mortem gave an open verdict. It revealed that Elaine had died from an injury to her neck. It was concluded that compression to her neck had occurred, which was so gentle that accidental death due to autoerotic asphyxiation couldn't be ruled out. The papers reported it as a possible sex game gone wrong. Police at the time and since believe it was murder. Police focused their efforts on local men of Buxton, feeling sure that Elaine's killer was in their midst. Suspicion hung heavily on Elaine's boyfriend. He was reported to be married. He wasn't charged, and soon after he left the police force and moved away, ultimately emigrating. The original investigation was lengthy, generating over 1,000 leads and 737 statements. At the time of the murder, the police staged a reconstruction of Elaine's movements that day, her long cold walk to her death. The police used a fellow officer to retrace those many steps that we're now doing by car. Elaine was wearing blue jeans with a red and yellow patch on the knee, a brown quilted zip-up jacket and tan shoes. These clothes were found 200 yards away from her body. She was found wearing only a bra. As we drive, I'm struck again and again by the sheer natural beauty of this area. It's vast, desolate and remote. The further we drive, the emptier it becomes. We see the occasional cyclist or walker, but mostly we see an expanse of moorland. There is an odd crop of rocks, and there is stillness. Much of her walk would have taken her along narrow lanes where two cars can't pass each other. The walk must have seemed endless. Reports at the time say it would have taken over 2 hours. Well, 2 hours is a lot of time to think. What did go through Elaine's mind that day as she made her way in the frigid temperatures, as the light faded and the weather whipped up? What was she feeling? Excited? Nervous? Who was she meeting? Was this someone new? Had she met this person using her CB radio? It would seem that she had told no one who she was meeting. Perhaps this was because she had a boyfriend and wanted to be discreet. Did she hitch a ride part of the way? Or did she walk this distance all alone, only to meet her death at the end of it? I read that long walks were usual for her, that this aspect of the case mustn't be considered notable. But the further we drive, and the knowledge of the lightening day and a 20-year-old girl alone, I cannot help but take pause. She was so far from home. It was late and cold. What was she expecting from this rendezvous? Police feel she was lured to her death. Whether this was the result of numerous conversations over CB, where she was groomed and lulled into feelings of security and comfort, well, one can only speculate. It does seem that her walk was purposeful, and that she was setting out to meet someone. There seems no other explanation behind her movements. One theory is that she met a man and that the death was accidental. He panicked and fled the scene. The other theory is that it was the intention of someone to kill her all along. Well, whoever she met, they did engage in some sexual activity, and Elaine died as a result of this meeting. Whoever met her left her almost naked, without thought for her dignity, in a remote area in the bitter winter. We're now approaching the point where we can go no further by car. Axe Edge Moor lies around us, and what was High End Raceway sits to our right. As we pull up, we can hear the engines of the cars as they race, and see the plumes of dust and exhaust smoke. It is in and around this area that Elaine Wakefield met her death 40 years ago. In 2003, 21 years after her death, the police reopened the case. As is often with cold cases, advances in DNA testing offered fresh hopes of a resolution. In this case, however, this was not to be. Despite police re-interviewing many people and requesting samples of their DNA, no fresh leads or information was revealed. 40 years on, the case is likely never to be solved. This poor girl has been gone for a lifetime she never got to experience. Frozen in time, 20 years old, discarded in remote hills in a beautiful part of the English countryside. No one ever held accountable, and justice out of reach. I can't imagine what that must be like for those that loved her family, her friends. This case may have fallen from the public eye many years ago, but for some, it will never be forgotten.